Within 24 hours, we will be getting insurance registration data for the first full week of November. And what I'm wondering about for NIO specifically is, can they see a 9,000 or better number? That would be significant. And I'm going to explain why. I've got this teaser pulled up from ThinkerCar to share what they're saying or suggesting. And so maybe we'll see similar numbers as to what they're saying. But the last 3 weeks, NIO has come in with over 10,000 on the weekly side of things. That's the insurance registration data. But the historically over the last few years that we've been tracking it, what we've seen is the beginning of the month is when we see the smaller numbers. And so, for example, this is a good example. If we go back to, where was it? September, here it is. September, the first week, you see a 6,300 number. That was following an 8,200 number, which was end of a month and also the best number that we had seen in quite a while. So the trend usually goes for NIO and the NIO Group that beginning of the month, smallest numbers. So I'm wondering and hoping really that we'll see a big uptick from this 6,000 roughly number that, again, just within the last few months we've been seeing here. But very, very excited to see how NIO is progressing, and they are the best positioned, especially in the battery swappable subsegmented part of the business within China. And so I think, and I wanted to point this out because I thought it was interesting. This is end of year from 2024. So sales were up for all three of the Chinese brands that a lot of folks were kind of grouping together, Li Auto, NIO, and Xiaopeng. But I think it's interesting to note that Li Auto has had a drop off, and I think this could be an indicator of the pivot point that's happening where extended range EVs or the hybrids are not as favorable as they maybe were. Also, I think with NIO finally getting most of their lineup out and refreshed, including the new vehicles and brands, sub-brands, everything out this year, we see them continue to trend up. But I think there's actually something else going on. I'm going to get there in just a second because it's a tie-in, and I think it's also a pivot point that we're going to see. But I wanted to mention this as well and share this because we got some updated information, and I think it's going to be, I'm tracking this kind of quietly in the background. I haven't talked a lot about it, but the chocolate battery swap stations, the CATLs versus NIO and their swap stations, how is that looking at it? I'm wondering if NIO even has an interest in what CATL is doing with their partners or not, sort of like CATL had with NIO. And we probably won't know that unless somebody thinks to ask William Li or Chinli Hong, and they actually tell us. I doubt we'll see until we get next year's or the annual SEC filing from this year, which would be probably published next year, maybe in about April. But this is also sort of, on that same wavelength. And what I'm thinking is we're seeing maybe a pivot and a switch and a change, but I don't know that it's necessarily a negative for NIO, even if CATL is looking to do this with their other partners. And one of the reasons is because even though we may see this slowly grow and more of the entities that we thought were only going to partner with NIO or that, had done these announcements with NIO, maybe they end up coming out with the swappable vehicles that are only going to go through the chocolate swap stations and that CATL. And as I said, maybe NIO has an investment in that. Maybe they don't. But my view is, if we come back to this, and again, I think there is a pivot point that we will see, kind of like maybe the drop off with Li Auto is an indicator of EREVs or hybrids falling out of favor. I do think we're going to get more favorable upside results for any of the brands that are smart enough to come out with battery swappable vehicles. And so even though perhaps what we're seeing is some of these other partners, and again, maybe NIO's involved, maybe they're not, maybe they're just quiet and a passive investor. But I don't know that this is a bad thing for NIO, even if it is separate, because it will bring more eyes and awareness to the benefits and, frankly, the longevity that battery swappable vehicles offer. And so the creative, side of not just on the selling side to the consumer, the cheaper price point, but also the reality that, the smart EVs are going to maintain their value for a lot longer. And now that I am aware of, for example, the idea that there are pure battery electric vehicle plays where you can have, in this case, NIO with their brands, you can have a swappable battery. You don't have to buy it. You don't have to take on that cost. And you really will have a longer, value proposition from the vehicle. I don't know why you would go to anything other than that. And so again, I think this is more of a long-term, mentality and view. And even the pivot point, perhaps 2026 is the year where we see that really kind of shift and change in that Chinese EV market, or NEV market. I don't know. Just thinking out loud, some of my thoughts along the way here. NIO has continued in the very recent term. I'm going to go on this left side, scroll out to where we've got this dilution point, and obviously the price isn't really tanking. It's not dropping. We are seeing most of these days very low volume recently. And that typically would be when big money or Wall Street or the shorts, perhaps market makers with short positions or put positions are, controlling stock price. Also, let me do this because perhaps noteworthy and worth monitoring, especially with things like out of the money calls coming up in the max pain price point. This is really interesting. $6 is the max pain price point, and there are a lot of out of the money calls for November 21st, 2025. So, is this going to be reflected? Are we going to see some craziness to the downside before maybe the next move up for NIO? I don't know, but I wanted to share it. Also, we haven't been getting the updated FTT data. I think this is due to the government shutdown. I don't know when that will resume and when the shutdown will stop or when we'll get the data. But when we get it, I'll share it again. I've mentioned this recently. I don't know that it matters a whole lot at this stage because with the low volume, I do think that shorts, particularly or in particular, the market makers with shorter put positions can control stock price if they want in the very short term. But we do, still see NIO kind of trading in this $7 range roughly. So with that $6 max pain out there, November 21st, let's just see what happens. Also, I just checked the NIO site this morning. No update, no official announcement from the newsroom from them on when their earnings will be. I know different dates and folks are saying different things, but unless or until I see it from NIO, I'm just kind of saying, let's wait and see. So in any event, wanted to share some of that. Drop it in the comments. I want to know from you if you think, I'm going to pull this back up, if you think that we'll get a 9,000 or better number for the week of November 3rd through the 9th. Again, that even a 9,000 number would be huge compared to what we've seen historically from NIO at the beginning of a month. We just don't, we haven't seen the bigger numbers, going back. It's just nice to have this run. We've had this really record setting, 3-week period with 10,000 plus each of the 3 weeks. While I don't expect 10,000, I'd love to see it. I will be very happy if we even see a 9,000 number. So I don't know, but I want to hear from you all and do a video, share a few of these things, some of my random thoughts. As always, I've got the ticker at the bottom of the screen sharing the long-term kind of view or my overview with that. And I would say the short term of the short side time frame of the long term is what I'm trying to say here, is that third one, and that's where there are 1 million NIO sales. All three brands total cumulatively are going to probably get to 1 million by the end of this year, but that is not what I was thinking years ago. I was thinking once we see 1 million NIO sales, so probably I'm thinking at least a couple more years. Again, that would be my own sort of view or take to see what everything looks like, and that is the sort of short side of the time frame, the long-term time frame, at least in my view. And anyway, I probably talked more than I needed to, but if you stuck around to the end, I appreciate you. Have a great day or night whenever you see this. See you all again very soon.